Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
Hey everybody, happy Monday and welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Hope you're all good. Hope you've all had as wonderful a weekend as I have. It's been a cracking weekend. I had the pleasure of co-commentating on the Arsenal game against Fulham at the weekend. Never done a co-commentary gig before. So this was the first time that I was kind of the one that people looked at for the kind of analysis and the insight, I suppose. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. You can watch the game back, of course, on arsenal.com in full. I know it wasn't a classic. I know that it's not the kind of game that people will be rushing back to watch. But if you fancy checking it out and you got any feedback, I'd appreciate it. Because as I say, it's the first time that I was doing that role. But I really did enjoy it. And then on Sunday, I had some friends round. We put the barbecue on, yes, in this weather, but I'm Greek, nothing's stopping me. I got shelter, obviously. Had a few kebabs, sat down, watched the Manchester United victory at Liverpool, which I have to say, I did not see coming in a million years. And then we jumped on and we brought you an episode of Harry Reacts here on the Chronicles of a Gooner. So there's some instant reaction to that Manchester United victory at Anfield available on the podcast feed and on this very YouTube channel, if that's where you are joining us from. But today, we're going to round up the weekend on the whole. We're going to talk about Arsenal sitting 3 points clear. We're going to continue to break down the victory at Fulham as well, with a focus on Eberechi, Eza, and Viktor Gyökeres in particular. And of course, on tomorrow's episode, we'll be bringing you some thoughts, some predictions, and lots of chat around the Atletico Madrid game at Emirates Stadium. I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to that one. I really am. I think that, you know, Atletico Madrid are one of the clubs in Europe that I've really admired for quite some time. There's obviously the additional narrative of Andrea Berta facing up against his former club. Diego Simeone coming to town always promises to be blockbuster in some way, shape or form. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a really enjoyable game, and we'll focus on that one, of course, from tomorrow. Let's start with our sort of Premier League roundup then, shall we? And we'll start with Liverpool losing to Manchester United. Look, I'm still shocked. I'm still surprised. We talked a little bit on yesterday's Harry Reacts episode about how the game played out, how despite the fact that Manchester United looked like they were defending for large periods and looked pretty compact and competent in doing that, which isn't something that we've said of them for a long time. You know, that's absolutely true. But also, they packed a few punches of their own as well. You know, the goal that they scored, they caught Liverpool cold really early on through Mbeumo, Van Dijk and McAllister clashing into one another. Well, to be fair to McAllister, Van Dijk came steaming into the back of him with a really powerful challenge. Liverpool sort of half complaining that the fact that McAllister was caught in the back of the head should have meant that the game was stopped, and the goal shouldn't have been allowed to stand because, of course, it was a head injury. Look, clearly the referee didn't realize that it was a head injury at that point. I don't think if I were a Liverpool fan, I'd be making too big of a deal of that. Ultimately, Virgil van Dijk and McAllister have not communicated, and there's that coming together. So, or maybe not, I can't say not communicated because I don't know what they said, but they didn't communicate well enough, I suppose. And that situation developed and Manchester United went on to score. But Liverpool, you know, they threatened to equalise earlier than they did. They hit the woodwork on a couple of occasions. Cody Gakpo was looking the most likely. And then in the end, Gakpo does score and level things. And you're thinking, you're looking at the clock, I think it was about 77, 78 minutes. And I had, as I said, I had some friends around, and I turned to my friend and I said, there's a long way to go here. What was interesting was that I distinctly remember when we equalised up at St James's Park, later, by the way, than Liverpool equalised against Manchester United, versus a much better team than the Manchester United team that Liverpool were up against yesterday. Gary Neville was adamant and insisted that champions, They go on and win this game. Champions go and find another goal. Champions go and score again. I didn't really feel that same energy from Gary Neville on this occasion. Did you? I don't recall him saying, and maybe I was zoned out or tuned out volume-wise. There were 5 children in the room. Maybe I zoned out and didn't hear it. Maybe I missed it. I don't know. But if someone could let me know, was Gary Neville insisting that Liverpool now need to go on and win this game? Well, guess what? They didn't. They got caught cold again, and they conceded what was a really sloppy and disappointing goal from a Liverpool perspective. Harry Maguire proving his worth at the other end of the pitch after defending very, very well for large periods of that game. He powers home a header. Goalkeeper unable to stop it, and Manchester United take all 3 points. That was the first time in over a decade, over 10 years, that Manchester United have gone to Liverpool and won, which says a lot about the kind of magnitude and the significance of the result and the outcome. For us, it's big because it prevented Liverpool from closing the gap on us. Listen, if you'd have asked me before the game, would I have taken a draw in that fixture? I'd have bitten your hand off. So to get a Manchester United win as we did, that's the stuff that dreams are made of. But I found some of Arne Slot's comments after the game a little bit frustrating. And we know firsthand that all managers can get a little bit prickly and a little bit spiky when things don't go their way, when they don't get the outcome or the result that they want. Johan correcting me, almost a decade, 2016. Apologies. At the end of this season, it would have been a decade since that. So, yeah, not more than a decade. You're absolutely right. But just going back to Arne Slot, I thought some of his comments were a little bit strange. Like he seemed to focus quite a bit on Manchester United's team selection. And I'm kind of like, well, it's their prerogative. They can turn up and play in any which way they like. And Ruben Amorim is desperate for results. And if we've sat here for months and months and months on end criticizing Ruben Amorim and saying the biggest problem and the biggest flaw when we're talking about the Portuguese coach and his tenure at Manchester United so far is that he's not been adaptable, how can we then sit there and take comments from Arne Slot whereby he's essentially bemoaning the fact that Ruben Amorim was adaptable? Like, Arne Slot can say what he wants, and I appreciate that there is an emotional side to it that takes over, and so I'm not going to go as big on Arne Slot's comments as maybe others might, or feel the need to. But I just think, no, Amorim, you adapted, you changed it, you did what was best for your team on the day, and whatever people's thoughts were on your team selection pre-kickoff, you won at Anfield for the first time since 2016. Take the win. Enjoy it, my friend, because you've had a torrid time at Manchester United so far. So, yeah. But it's just funny, isn't it, how the narratives are all different and how certain clubs get the boot stuck in on them a lot more than others, and others are protected. And that, in part, has a lot to do with the people that are in those punditry positions, I always feel. Because people always say, and I have this conversation a lot with sort of friends and other people that follow football. They say, yeah, I don't really listen to the mainstream media anymore. There's so much great football content out there that I don't need to listen to Carragher or to Neville or to Roy Keane or to Micah Richards or whoever it might be. But the truth of the matter is this: those people still have a huge influence on the tone of the narratives that follow on from the biggest games, right? So Super Sunday, 4:30, a lot of the time it's the biggest game of the week. And the post-match analysis is not the be-all and end-all. If it's Arsenal, I sort of watch it with interest and I listen to it with intrigue. But if I'm being honest with you, it's not the analysis that's going to most shape my opinion personally. But I'm always interested to hear what it is. And I'm always interested to hear how it's delivered and the tone in which it's delivered, because I realize that when you zoom out, actually their influence, the influence that these guys have in terms of how the tone is set for the week coming up until you play the next game, or for the few days coming up until you play the next game, it's huge. It is huge. But anyway, Liverpool losing was a nice, pleasant surprise. We're only 3 points clear, though, of Manchester City. So it's 4 of Liverpool right now, 3 clear of Manchester City. I keep telling people, Manchester City are in this race. They are well and truly in this race. I'm not taking it when people say, no, Manchester City, nowhere near. It's only a 2-horse race. No. Any team that is that well stocked in terms of its squad, that has Pep Guardiola, arguably, if not the greatest manager of all time, certainly up there, sat on their bench. They've got the best striker in world football by a country mile in terms of efficiency and goal scoring capability. They're not out of this. So don't sleep on them. Don't look down the table and see Liverpool there 4 points behind us and think, oh, this is brilliant. We can really kind of push on. We can, but don't be naive. Don't be silly and don't fall into that trap. What really works for us here, and this is going to be dependent on us taking maximum points from our upcoming games, right? We've got Crystal Palace at home at the weekend after Atletico Madrid, obviously. Then we've got Burnley away and we've got Sunderland away. Okay. We need to take maximum points from these games, because if we do, that game between Manchester City and Liverpool just before the international break could be massive. It could be massive for us, because it could give us a cushion on both of them. If they were to both drop points, it could see us open up a wider gap with one of them if one of them is to come out victorious. There is a lot of benefit to winning our games is always a benefit, but do you see what I mean? Like, this could be a really I don't want to say decisive because it's early, but this could be a really key point in the season if we're able to extend this lead that we have now even further. And I agree with some of your comments in the live chat, like Palace will not be easy, says Afsar. Absolutely, I don't take them lightly at all. I don't take them lightly at all. Z says he likes the look of City, but he still thinks that they're too dependent on Haaland. I don't. I'll be honest with you, mate. I don't disagree with that. There is a heavy reliance on him, but we've seen teams win leagues before and win things before when being kind of overly reliant, if you like, on certain players. I mean, Robin van Persie basically won the Premier League for Man United that season, didn't he? James Nichols says, I get bored of some of the pundits on Sky Sports a lot of the time. I wish they would freshen it up. Now, look, generally speaking, I think they're good pundits. And I think, they've got a decent roster of people there, and those people bring in the views. And that is undeniable. But I feel like, and it's like putting me to sit and sort of be a pundit on a Liverpool versus Tottenham game, right? I've got my views on both of those teams. I've got my preconceptions about both of those teams. I'd even go as far as saying I've got agendas when it comes to those two teams. And so is it fair to come to me for that analysis? And I would argue that if you put someone Liverpool focused like Jamie Carragher, he's always going to be softer on Liverpool than he would be on Arsenal or Man United. And if you've got Roy Keane, who's of a Man United persuasion, he's always going to be harder on Liverpool and harder on Arsenal. Like, I think what you have to do in order to not get bothered and riled up by it is basically understand the dynamic. Like, when you turn your TV onto that channel, you have to understand the dynamic of that panel straight away. And only when you do can you then sort of differentiate between what's good analysis and what is something that in part is being driven by an agenda or an allegiance or a bias and all the rest of it. But not only did Liverpool lose yesterday, which was obviously great for us in terms of the title race, Tottenham were beaten at home by Aston Villa. They have got a dreadful home record, Tottenham Hotspur. It's really, really poor. And I've got friends that are Tottenham supporters. I've grown up in North London. I live in an area now that's probably got more Tottenham supporters than Arsenal supporters, sort of occupying or inhabiting the area, however you want to put it. And so I speak to Tottenham fans a lot. And for a couple of weeks now, I've had sort of Spurs supporting friends of mine say things to me like, I'm not sure Thomas Frank's the guy. We don't have that flair. We don't have that creativity. We're missing something. It's not quite right. And I always sort of like point them back to the squad. And I say, I don't think the squad is amazing, if I'm being honest with you. I think there's a lot of players that Tottenham are reliant upon that just aren't consistent enough. On top of that, though, I think people have forgotten where Spurs were last season. Now, I know Ange Postecoglou was bad, and we're going to come on to talk about him in a minute. I know Ange Postecoglou was bad, but at the same time, that team finished 17th. So if you thought that they were going to go from 17th to like challenging for the Premier League title, then that is crazy. They've made a jump from 17th to 6th. Like, I don't see that as a bad start to the season from Tottenham's perspective. There are going to be elements of their performances that those who watch them much more closely than I do have every right to feel concerned and a little bit worried about. But I think, it's way too early to be giving Thomas Frank the level of stick that I've seen him getting on social media. Just finally, before we break, we got to touch on the Postecoglou sacking minutes after Chelsea won at the City Ground. The funniest thing about this is that I actually think that Forest played all right on the day. They created some good chances, couldn't take them, got caught napping and ended up conceding some quite cheap goals in the end. You could kind of see this coming. You kind of got the feeling and you felt that Ange Postecoglou was in the last chance saloon, if you like. But at the end of the day, I just don't understand why things like this are allowed to happen. Like, he has an international break. During that international break, he loses a ton of players. He can't work with them. He can't implement anything. Half of them are not even in the country. So then you come back from the international break and you give him an opportunity. Obviously, the performance was better, but the outcome still very, very poor. Now, if you look at just the sheer volume of games that Ange Postecoglou lost as Forest manager in a very short period of time, there is a case for him to be sacked, yes. But I just don't understand why Mr. Marinakis did not make this move before the international break, then essentially giving himself the entire international break to go out and get someone that he really, really wants, to go out and bring someone in that is going to be an upgrade. What he's done now instead, and what it looks like is imminent, is the arrival of Sean Dyche. Now, I've got no problem with Sean Dyche. I think as a manager, he's a safe pair of hands. And if you're in danger of going on a bit of a slide, someone like Sean Dyche is going to come in. He's going to instill the basics. He's going to get your team organized, robust, all the rest of it. And you're not going to lose as many football matches. You might not be as expansive and as exciting, but he is going to come in and, as I say, steady the ship. I've got no doubt in my mind that Sean Dyche will do that. But is that the appointment that Forest really want? Like, if it was just about a safe pair of hands, you'd have kept hold of Nuno, wouldn't you? Who was more than a safe pair of hands. He'd taken Nottingham Forest back into Europe. And this is where I will be critical of Mr. Marinakis, because I think a lot of the time he gets a bad rap. And a lot of the time I sort of push back on people and I say, look at where Forest were when he took over. Look at where they are today. The fact that they're back in Europe is it's unbelievable. It's amazing. And a lot of that is to do with how desperate he is to succeed or to see his team succeed, but also the ruthlessness that he showed in the decision-making that he's kind of displayed for a long, long time now. But like the Nuno thing, clearly Nuno fell out with Edu. Felt like Nuno fell out with Marinakis as well. And if I'm Marinakis, I would have looked at him, at Nuno, and I'd have sort of taken stock and I'd have stopped being so bloody hot-headed. And I'd have gone, do you know what? We've had a bit of a falling out. We've had a bit of a disagreement, but I need this guy. This guy has taken my club to a level that I could have only dreamed of when I first bought into the football club. So actually, I'm going to swallow my pride and I'm going to do what's best for my football club. And I'm going to try and make amends. And it feels like, and it sounds like, and again, we are looking at this from the outside, that Mr. Marinakis backed Edu over Nuno, which probably shouldn't have happened. And before you know it, we've got Nuno leaving, Postecoglou, totally different manager, coming in, not able to make it work. And now 8 weeks into the job, he's gone as well. And you've got Edu there who, listen, I thought did good things at Arsenal, but as I've mentioned on a recent podcast, I think we all kind of realized that actually there are levels to this business. And yes, he did a good job in terms of turning that Arsenal ship around along with Mikel Arteta and putting us on the right path and all of that. But he's not he is just not Andrea Berta level. And then at Forest, or within the Forest multi-club model, he's now tasked with being responsible for multiple clubs. And I'm not sure he's at the top level when it comes to handling one club. So there's a problem here. There is a real problem here. Getting rid of Nuno was bad. And whatever happened, like fallings out can happen, disagreements, clashes of opinions, all of that stuff could happen. I think it was on the owner and on Edu. It was their responsibility to try and build those bridges back and mend the relationship with Nuno, because the grass isn't always greener, as Nottingham Forest have found out. And now they've ended up with a worse manager. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to Sean Dyche, but in the sense of Sean Dyche will steady the ship, but he ain't going to take you any further. And he's certainly not going to match what Nuno did. Not at any point, I don't think. So my point is this. My point is this. You've ended up in a worse position than the one that you started in, because your egos got in the way of you essentially swallowing your pride and making the right decision. So I don't feel sorry for Forest now. And I certainly don't feel sorry for Mr. Marinakis, who I normally think is pretty good in terms of his decision making. But this time, he and the people around him have got it horribly wrong. Right, we're going to take a really brief pause, and when we come back, we're going to focus solely on the Arsenal. That's our Premier League roundup complete. Those are all the big stories. On the Arsenal side of things, we're going to talk Eze, we're going to talk Gyökeres, and we're going to take a load of your questions from the live chat. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just 10 seconds. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Thanks for being with us.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, Harry Symeou. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Laughing Man says, were you the color commentator for the Arsenal channel? If not, it's someone who sounds similar to you. I was. I've just learnt this term, color commentator. It's obviously an American term. We call them co-commentators or summarizers here in the UK. But co-commentator, color commentator is a new term for me. But yeah, that's right. I was working on the game in that capacity, and I really enjoyed it. Thanks for bringing me to speed with a new term. I really like it. Okay, let's move on to the Arsenal then. Let's talk a little bit about that victory at Craven Cottage. There was obviously lots to like, lots to be pleased about. And ultimately, we've got the outcome that we really wanted. And when you look at the way that the rest of the weekend shaped up, actually, it could go down as a very important win when we're looking back on it come May, hopefully. Because I've always said this, after an international break, there is an uncertainty. There is a worry and a concern about how you kind of are going to see the performance look after you're sort of taking lots of pieces and plugging them all back into one another. So I was concerned and I was worried. And Fulham was a place that we hadn't won in the past 2 years. And we've gone there and we've not played amazingly well, but we've played well enough. And Set Piece FC have essentially done their thing. Leandro Trossard's come up with a really important goal for us. And we've been able to see the game out without conceding a shot on target, which is, again, a testament to the defensive stability that we have and the way that we've kind of built this machine from the defense forward. And I know not everybody is totally enamored with that kind of idea and philosophy, but it's working, it's effective, and we're getting results. One of the players that I talked about quite a bit on the pod, but also on the Patreon pod that we put out yesterday was Eberechi Eze. And I've had a chance to watch the game back again. Yes. Why would anyone watch that game more than once, let alone 3 times, which is what I've watched it back now. The thing is, what I like to do, I like to get up early in the mornings because obviously my kids get me up from the crack of dawn. But while they're still sort of like pottering around upstairs and like trying to find their school uniforms and like, demanding what they want for breakfast, I tend to kind of like sneak off into the shadows and sit on the couch and put back on the games that I want to watch again before sort of going into a week of essentially talking about them and breaking them down. And I said on yesterday's pod and I said on the Patreon pod that although I've got no concerns about Eberechi Eze, and I have to be very, very clear in saying that because I know that the way these things can be taken out of context. Although I've got no issues or no worries really with Eberechi Eze, I certainly felt that Saturday was a game in which we got nowhere near the maximum out of him. And there was a part of me that felt that that was down to him and maybe him not being proactive enough in terms of going and roaming that little bit more just to get on the ball and to try and influence the game. But there was a part of me that felt like the fact he's not doing it might mean he's under very clear instructions to stay in those central areas. Because what we've seen, not just with Eze, but with Gyökeres as well, is that when we have players occupying those very central areas without drifting, without roaming, and essentially causing quite a bit of distraction to the opposition defense, we've seen the likes of Bukayo Saka afforded way more space. Because what we're doing is we're creating a problem in the middle that requires immediate attention. We've also got the ability and the capacity to create problems from wide. And that'll be something that the opposition are obviously worried about. But how much resource can you commit to going and dealing with the issues wide when you've got problems to deal with in the center? Because the basic defensive principles dictate that you want to protect the width of your penalty area first. So even if we see games where Gyökeres and Eze are not as involved as we'd like them to be, they're still playing a part and they're still playing a role in some way, shape, or form. I mean, the amount of times that Bukayo Saka found himself 1v1 with Sessegnon, that doesn't happen if Eze doesn't hold that more central position. It doesn't happen if Viktor Gyökeres isn't occupying the centre halves and preventing them from shuffling across. So I think, it's not to dismiss the role that Eze played at the weekend, but I do want to see him just roaming a little bit more at times so that he can get on the ball and he can influence the game himself rather than being a facilitator. I know that you want him in an ideal world to be a bit of both, but I'd just like to see a little bit more proactivity on his part. Is it because he's still new? Is it because he doesn't have necessarily the confidence to kind of push back on the manager's instruction or to sort of ignore the manager's instruction at certain times and go roaming and drifting? I don't know. Hopefully over time we see him sort of settle in a bit better and decide that, yeah, you know what, I know what Mikel wants, but I think in this instance, it's best if I do X, Y, Z, and I'm going to go and execute that, and I'm going to go and influence the game. So yeah, I think it's interesting. And also as well, like playing Eze in the 10 rather than playing Odegaard as an 8/10, it's different. It's very, very different, and we're still adjusting and we're still adapting to new patterns, to new combinations, and all the rest of it. But we did a bit of a breakdown on Eze's display on the Patreon pod, so go over and check that out if you haven't done so already. Patreon.com/The Chronicles of a Gooner. The link is in the description below. Go and check it out. We're going to talk Viktor Gyökeres in just a moment, but before we do that, I want to quickly remind you, if you haven't done so already, guys, please leave a like on the video. If you're with us on YouTube, it really, really, really does help. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. That also really, really helps. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review. That is also very, very important. So, yeah, if you could do your bit, I'd be super, super grateful. If you'd like to go one further and support us for less than the price of a cup of coffee each month, you can do so via patreon.com. You'll get access to all our bonus and exclusive content, which centers around the matches. You'll also get access to every single episode ad-free. Plus, you'll be a part of our Patreon community. You can get involved in the live chat. You've got a direct line into me for your requests and your thoughts as well. So, yeah, check it out. Right, let's move on. Let's talk Viktor Gyökeres, shall we? Because the Swede is coming under a little bit of pressure at the moment. And that's because he's not scoring goals, and he hasn't scored a goal for 8 games now, I think, which is somewhat concerning, but not massively concerning for me, because I still think he's contributing. And I've mentioned already, and I've touched on how I think he's contributing to the overall attacking picture. And I've actually got to the point where I'm kind of sick of making that point and kind of sick of defending him. If you cannot see that, then I would question how closely you're watching. And I know that, as a football fan, you want to be wowed and you want to see things that are obvious. And in some cases, there are people that need it to slap them in the face before they realize what it is specifically that they're watching. I don't deny that he needs to score more goals, and I don't deny that he needs to, to be more productive in front of goal. And I did mention that I agreed with Alan Shearer's match of the day analysis in that I felt that he was sort of snatching at the chances that were coming his way, because I think he had 3 shots against Fulham. I felt like he was sort of just so focused on getting A, power, and B, hitting the target, that there was no cuteness and deftness to anything that he was doing, which essentially made it very easy to read and predict. And a decent goalkeeper like Bernardo is going to make those saves most of the time. So, yeah, I do think there's room for improvement. But I'm just really, really sick and tired of having to fight the battle for Viktor Gyökeres all the time, because I don't think we're at that point where we need to really be hitting the panic button. I also think that it's kind of shone a light on the fact that, hey, everybody thought Kai Havertz was struggling at centre forward. Well, no, Kai Havertz is a very, very different type of player, and obviously has his own strengths and weaknesses. But it just goes to show you that the 9 at Arsenal, when you're facing a low block that essentially looks to swallow that player up, can be a very, very difficult and demanding role to play. And that should be obvious now. But I did make a point on yesterday's pod, and it's going to go out as a short on the channel. It's gone out on my socials already. You might have seen it. You might have come across it. I do feel like Viktor Gyökeres is maybe overthinking the physical battle a little bit. He's come to the Premier League, and when he's been talking to people about the difference between the Premier League and the Portuguese Super League, and I know that he's had experience of playing in England, and in terms of this particular aspect of the game, the physical aspect of the game, the Championship is just as robust and just as fierce and demanding. But I feel like he's almost come to the Premier League and been so focused on making sure he competes physically that he's allowed that to overtake some of the rest of his game. And he's allowed it to cloud his judgment a little bit, because I feel like when we get balls up to him early, particularly long balls with the height as well, I feel like his focus is on bumping the defender before it is about putting himself in the right position. And I feel like you can't allow that to happen. Like, you've got to be strong and you've got to stand your ground. And if you identify what the right position to be in is, and you go to stand there and someone's in your way, bump them, no problem. If someone's coming to try and move you out of that position, stand your ground, be physical. But I feel like he's looking for the physical contact before he's looking for the flight of the ball. And then by the time he's engaged in the physical contact and ended up on the other side of it, he's too slow to then adjust in order to get into the right position for the ball. So I feel like he's got to change his mindset a little bit. Ball's coming over, have a little glance over your shoulder, be aware of what's coming. No problem. Put yourself in that position. Anticipate that you might have to stand your ground. You might have to make a challenge. But your first focus should be on flight of the ball. And I can't get inside Viktor Gyökeres' head to tell you for sure what he's thinking and when he's thinking it. But I feel like that's what I can see. That's how I view it at this moment of time. Again, I want to stress the point. I don't have any major concerns about Viktor Gyökeres, just like I don't about Eberechi Eze. But I think there is room for improvement with both of them. I think that for Eze, it was about positional play a little bit more at the weekend, in terms of him just being a little bit more rigid in his position. And I know that brings benefits, as I've already explained, but I'd have liked to have seen him just go looking for it a little bit more. And with Viktor Gyökeres, as I say, I think this is an acclimatization thing more than anything else. So let's hope that he can kind of get to grips with that. And I really do feel like with Viktor Gyökeres, he just needs a goal now. And once he gets that goal, the floodgates will open and we'll be absolutely fine. But at the moment, that goal is not forthcoming, and therefore there's going to be noise. Listen, as a striker, he'll be the first person to I think understand that and realize that, you know, I'm a striker. My job primarily, it's not my only job, but my job primarily is to score goals. And if I don't do that, people are going to ask questions of me. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. And listen, while the team is winning, this won't be a big problem in the eyes of many. When the team, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but when the team drops points and the results aren't good enough, or Viktor Gyökeres spurns an opportunity, that noise will get louder naturally. And it becomes more of a priority and urgent issue when sort of discussing games. But right now we're sort of getting away with it, and he's getting away with it, I suppose, to a point, the fact that he's not scoring regularly. But you should be proactively working hard behind the scenes to try and fix that issue before it becomes a bigger issue in the broader picture and from a wider perspective. So, yeah, let's see what happens. Look, going to take another really, really brief pause, and then I'm going to take a few of your questions before I sign out. Just a quick reminder again, like the video if you're with us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and check us out on Patreon. The link is in the description below. Do you know what? I just want to see where we're at in terms of likes today. I have to start getting on top of this more. I've been slacking recently. We've only got 78 likes on the board, but there is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of you with us. So there's no excuse for me not to have at least 150 by the time and I'm being generous there, by the time I sort of click end stream. Anyway, let's get a couple of your questions in from the live chat, shall we? Just back on Gyökeres a minute. Martin says, in fairness, he's heavily defended too. Yeah, he is. Stilton Avenger says, am I the only one losing connection with the team? I don't see as many personalities or fun in the team. And then he mentions Calafiori, I think, as the sort of the example of a bit of personality, a bit of fun, a bit of flair, etc. I'm not really losing connection with the team. I wouldn't say that's the right thing. Is it the most exciting Arsenal team? No, I don't think it is. But I think there's a trend in modern football that Arsenal have seen that actually we need to jump on if we're going to be competitive. I mean, the re-emergence of set pieces as a real kind of focus piece in football has been interesting, and it's not just something that we've seen at Arsenal, is it? We've seen it, as I say, across the division, across the league. You know, everybody's adopting long throw-ins and all the rest of it. So I just think the game's changed a lot. You know, I think the higher the level gets, the more able teams are to cancel each other out, and that will lead to less interesting games and at times less entertaining games. But I'm not feeling the same way as you, mate. I appreciate it's your view, and as I say, you know, everybody's view's welcome, but I don't feel like that. I feel a connection because, and I say this, I've said this before, it's not because I love this team or even rate this team more than I did the Invincibles or more than I did the 97-98 team or the 01-02 double winning side. It's none of that. It's just that, and maybe it's to do with sort of my work as well. Like I've covered Arsenal professionally for a few years now. And so this project is something that I've been really kind of focused on and really sort of ingrained without being inside it, but just sort of in terms of the level of detail that I sort of study it with and follow it with and all the rest of it. And so for that reason, I feel a connection to this team. I'm not going to pretend that I don't want Mikel Arteta to succeed more than I'd want other managers to succeed because of my job. This doesn't mean I'm on the payroll and all the rest of it, and I get that crap all the time, or that I can't criticize. I criticized plenty over the summer to the point where some of you were questioning me, saying, "Are you all right, Harry? This is not like you." No, that was how I felt at the time, and I shared those feelings and those thoughts, and you know, I'm entitled to do that. Nobody tells me what I can and can't say. But do I want him to succeed? Am I desperate for him to succeed? Because I've seen so many good things that I'd love it to be crowned off, and I want the noise around it to just stop. Yeah, of course I do. But why wouldn't I? You know, this is because, you know, this is Arsenal. This is my club. I want my club to do well. And if Unai Emery was in charge again, I'd want them to win still. Like, so yeah. Anyway, but no, I'm not really losing that connection. I feel good about it at this moment in time. What else have we got in the live chat? I'm just going to pick up a few more questions. There's some really interesting comments in there about the Gyökeres thing. Have a look at them, have a read of them. I'm not going to read them all out or we'll be here all day, but check them out. Dotton says, I think Arteta may be the best adaptable coach in the world. His ability to play different styles of football against different oppositions is amazing. And I think he's been unlucky so far. I think he's one of the better coaches in Europe right now, but I'm not going to say he's the best adaptable coach in the world until he wins more. I will reserve that very, very high praise for Mikel Arteta until we're lifting the Premier League or the Champions League or whatever. But like, he is adaptable. He is flexible. It's one of the things I like about him. And And yeah, I think he will get there. Joe says modern day football fans seem to have camps with players now, e.g. these Eze versus Odegaard people celebrating that certain players are injured so their favourite players get to play. It's very, very odd. Whereas I just see them as tools to get the job done. Don't even care who gets it done, as I'm an Arsenal fan. Yeah, I agree with that. You can have your preferences. You can have your preferences. You can have your favourites, but I agree with you. Jid, welcome to the show, mate. He says, what do you think prompted this shift from clubs like Arsenal and Liverpool to move to playing with target men when we found success playing with wide attackers? Has it been fan pressure? I don't think it's fan pressure. I think it's to do with just the constant evolution of the game and the tactical trends that we see. And at this moment in time, I think people feel like, they need to follow those tactical trends to a degree to keep their team relevant, because otherwise, with teams being so capable these days and so across every little detail, you can be cancelled out. You can be null and void, essentially. On the whole sort of target man thing for Arsenal, I don't think Gyökeres is a target man. Target men are players that you send long balls up to with their back to goal. Gyökeres likes to spin and run in behind. I think that's what Gyökeres' superpower is. If I'm being honest, I would argue that Kai Havertz is probably more of a target man than Viktor Gyökeres when he plays in behind. But I just think for Arsenal, they realised, looking back at last season, that without having that centre forward that would run in behind, it was really, really difficult to create an environment whereby those around the centre forward would ever get enough space. And if you've got someone that runs in behind and is a different threat, that gives the centre halves a panic and a problem, and they've got to focus on that player, which means they can't go out and double up on your wide players. I just think it's to do with the overall trends that we're seeing in the game. I don't think it's like Arteta read some comments online from people saying we need a centre forward and thought, shit, I better go and get one. Like, I know that the club will keep their ear to the ground and they'll know sort of generally what's been said and what those narratives sound or look like, but I don't think that would be the influence tactically. No. DJ Sooty says, if you could invite 3 Arsenal players, current or previous, around for a souvla, which is a Greek barbecue, who would you invite and why? He says this is a random question to keep you on your toes. I'd invite, this is tough. I'd invite Thierry Henry, because I'd just be fascinated by him. I'm going to invite Arsene Wenger as well. Like, I know he's not a player, but I'd invite Arsene Wenger because I just love hearing from him. I think he's so insightful and brilliant. And then I'd probably invite someone like, wait, I got to change these. You've really put me on the spot here. Okay, I'm going to change it. I'm going to go Ian Wright because I think he'd be a laugh as well as very good company. I'm going to invite Thierry Henry because he's Thierry Henry. And then I'm going to invite Freddie Ljungberg because I've met him a few times and he's just a lovely guy. And I think he's capable of having a good laugh as well. I haven't thought about this. You've caught me off guard there, and I'll probably go home go inside the house and sit there and mull over this for the rest of the day. Great question. Let me know your selections in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys. I really, really would. Let's take this one finally from Guitar Solo. He says, what's Eze's best position? He's not pulled up any trees at left wing or as an 8, despite H boldly proclaiming that after just one game, he was the coming of Pires. He's not played enough games as a left-sided player in this Arsenal team for you to sort of downplay my view or opinion that he would be an upgrade on Martinelli in terms of outputs, which is what I spoke about when we first signed him. He's not really playing there. When he does, I think he gives us something. And I think, again, it's about horses for courses, and it's about picking the right players for the right game. And that's where having this big squad and having Arteta's capability to adapt is going to serve us well, I think, over the course of the season. I think in an ideal world, you want to get Eze in the central and half spaces, but I think he can do damage in those areas, even if his starting position is on the left-hand side. For Eze to be successful on the left-hand side, he has to have license to roam. And I think he will get that. But again, that depends on then how your midfield's set up behind him. Is it Zubimendi and Rice as a pairing? In which case, that gives him a bit more freedom because those guys can cover for what he leaves defensively. Is it Calafiori at left back who's going to go roaming? I don't think it should be Calafiori with Eze because none of them are going to stay on the left flank and you've got all sorts of problems. So it's about finding the combinations around these players, I think, that will see us get the best version of each and every one of them. Okay, I am going to leave it there. Thank you all so much for joining me on today's episode of the pod. Remember, you can go back and check out our full Fulham review. That one is on the feed. It's on the YouTube channel as well. If you're on the YouTube channel, go to the playlists on the homepage and you can find match reviews and it will be in that category. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, just scroll back a couple of episodes and you'll find that Fulham review. There's also some reaction to Liverpool's defeat yesterday at the hands of Manchester United, a result very few saw coming. And we're going to be back tomorrow with a look ahead to Atletico Madrid at Emirates Stadium. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful Monday. Don't get too wet. It is pissing down with rain. But yeah, other than that, have a great day. All the best. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.